There are people out there that will tell you JJ McCarthy will be drafted before Marvin Jr. Don't listen to him.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everyone, to a Wednesday edition of Locked On Buckeyes here on Wednesday, April 24th in the year 2024. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side and is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join our friends and download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. And joining us during today's show, we normally don't generally venture out and get a lot of different guests that haven't been here before, but when you get someone from PFF that is a well full of knowledge of when it comes to the draft and Ohio State Buckeyes, you got to get him on. It is Max Chadwick. He is PFF college football analyst and the co-host of the PFF college football show. Max, welcome in. Marv's the headliner, but there still is a lot of talent in this Ohio State draft class.
Yeah, Jay, thanks for having me on, man. And yeah, it's definitely an interesting draft for Ohio State. You know, there's obviously Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be a top 4 pick, honestly. There's still a lot of other Ohio State prospects to get excited about in this draft that I think we're going to see on day 2 and day 3, though.
You said number 4? Is that where you're kind of like your pick now? I know it's a couple days before the draft, but are you saying Marv's a cemented number 4 pick coming up on Thursday of this week?
I would be surprised if he's not the number 4 overall pick at this point. I think the only chance that he's not are if the Arizona Cardinals trade out of number 4 and we see QBs go 1, 2, 3, 4. I've heard reports, though, that it would take a historic haul for the Cardinals to move out of 4, and I don't think it's enough. Or I don't think the Vikings or whoever else would pay that to move up to number 4 for JJ McCarthy. So that's the only way I can see Marvin Harrison Jr. going not top 4. And if he doesn't go top 4, he's going top 5 because I think the Chargers will scoop him up immediately at number 5. But I think right now I feel really good about him being an Arizona Cardinal on Thursday.
Think about what you just said, though. That mix there of potentially McCarthy being drafted before Harrison Jr., and I don't believe he's a better player at all. No. I know he's a quarterback, a very important position, but he's not a better quarterback. He's not a better player. But then if he goes 5, he's going to Harbaugh, which is still going to rub Ohio State fans the wrong way. But I still think that McCarthy one, now you bring that up, is very interesting because I never thought he was a potential first-round pick at all throughout any of his career. Did a lot of good things, but hearing his name even a couple months ago and a month ago keep getting more attention, then all of a sudden, potential first-round pick, Max, I never saw that.
Dude, neither did I. I thought he was more of like a second-round pick the whole season. And then this year, he had a good year. The issue, I keep saying this, the issue with JJ McCarthy isn't quality. He's a high-quality quarterback. The issue is quantity. I mean, the guy, quite frankly, hasn't had to carry an offense like Caleb Williams has, like Drake May has, like Jaden Daniels has, like even Michael Penix Jr. or Bo Nix has too. He hasn't had to do that. I mean, he had a really great supporting cast. That Penn State game, which was a close game, he had 8 total pass attempts, 0 in the second half. I mean, this guy just wasn't relied on to carry the Michigan offense, which is why I'm a little bit weary saying, hey, let's trade up to the top 5 for him and make him carry an NFL offense. That's why I'm a little hesitant on that. But he's certainly got the tools to be a franchise quarterback. It's just you're betting on that upside more than you're betting on something that you haven't really seen too much of yet from JJ McCarthy, which is why I'm a little bit hesitant right now. But I do think JJ McCarthy is probably going to end up being at least a top 10 pick, and I think he's more likely going to be a top 5 pick. I think there's someone that's going to trade up to number 5, I think, with the Chargers. I think the Vikings are probably going to trade up to 5 and take JJ McCarthy. Again, I don't agree with it. I would take him mid to late first round at the most, but I think there's going to be a team desperate enough to move up potentially in the top 5 for JJ McCarthy.
The one thing that we do know, though, is with Marv's film, it speaks volumes. He doesn't have to do much talking to really talk himself up or hype himself up. His film is phenomenal. He did have a different process through the draft process, the pre-draft process, where it didn't do anything at the combine except for go through medicals and talk to NFL teams. Didn't work out at the pro day. Some people say it's a negative. Max, I think it's actually a positive because he's letting his film speak for him, not work out during these events.
Dude, it's so funny to me that people are trying to make this a problem for him, where it's like, if you don't know that Marvin like I remember Brock Bowers also didn't really work out either. And I saw some people like, oh, that's because Brock Bowers is not that athletic. It's like, watch Georgia tape, watch Brock Bowers, and you tell me that guy's not athletic. Like, if you watch Marvin Harrison Jr. and say, oh, he didn't work out because he's not a very good athlete, you're an idiot. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, you are. Like, he's quite frankly an elite athlete. And we actually have GPS tracking that we can see how fast you play on the field, not just your 40 time. And he's hit over 20 miles per hour routinely on GPS tracking. So he's got a really, really athletic build, obviously a bigger receiver as well. Anyone who's trying to use the fact that he didn't work out against him, I don't think has really watched too much of Marvin Harrison Jr. I personally don't care about it at all. Would I have liked to see the times? For sure, because I just want to see what he does. And I'd love to see him compete out there. But like, I don't put any stock into him not working out at all. And I think it won't hurt him at all in the draft, honestly. And I think any team that's using that against him, it's not a very smart team. I'll put it that way.
Is there a possibility from people you've talked to and just your analysis of the draft that he could be the third pick or maybe even the second pick in the draft this week?
Second, definitely not. I think the Commanders are pretty locked into taking a quarterback. Third, I would say I would put like a 10% chance at it. I think the Patriots are in a spot where they need a quarterback badly, but the reason why I don't think it's a 0% chance is because the Patriots supporting cast for that quarterback is quite frankly abysmal. Like, I think the Bears have a great supporting cast for Caleb Williams to walk into. Commanders have a pretty solid one. The Vikings have a great one. I think the Patriots one is terrible. They have a horrible receiving core, and then they have not much help they need a left tackle badly. So I can see the Patriots being like, listen, let's get a guy that we know is going to be a superstar. Whereas, we're kind of taking a risk at quarterback. We know Marvin's going to be a superstar. We'll find a quarterback next year, potentially, or a year after, or whatever. I don't think they should do that. I think they need to find a quarterback this year and then use the rest of the draft to fill out the offense. But I think there's a slight chance that they might go, hey, we don't love any of the quarterbacks here at 3. Let's take a guy that we know is going to be a superstar. Again, I don't think they should do that. And if they don't like any of the quarterbacks, they should trade down to a team that does like a quarterback because the Patriots simply have that many holes in their roster. But yeah, I'd be surprised if Marvin Harrison Jr. is a top 3 pick, but I don't think it's completely out of the realm possibility that he is the number 3 overall pick.
One more thought here on Marv here for you. I recently looked at FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On, and ended up looking at their betting odds for who would win Offensive Rookie of the Year for this upcoming season. Marv's number 2. Could you see a scenario where him being a receiver could be Offensive Rookie of the Year in the upcoming NFL season?
Definitely. I think, especially if he goes to Arizona, where you have a really good quarterback, I think, in Kyler Murray throwing in the ball. I mean, I think he could definitely be I think he would be one of the top rookies in the NFL. I think a guy like Malik Neighbors, if he goes to Los Angeles, would also be a guy I look at too. And then obviously any of the quarterbacks. Like, I think Caleb Williams would be one of the guys I look at most because he's going into a great situation in Chicago. And you saw, like, if Chicago, and I think Chicago has with how weak the NFC is compared to the AFC, there's a chance Chicago makes the playoffs next year. I think we could be talking about Caleb Williams in the same way we talk about CJ Stroud, and that, oh my God, look at like how big of a difference it is for Houston going from one of the worst teams in the league to a playoff team. I think I'm assuming, I haven't looked at the odds. I'm assuming Caleb Williams is the favorite, right? Yeah. So I think that's why, because I think people are assuming like, hey, the Bears have a really good team. Like, the Bears could make the playoffs next year. It wouldn't be a shocker to anyone. And Caleb Williams would obviously be at the forefront of that. So I think he's probably he would be my pick for the favorite. But yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr., absolutely. I think he's going to put up stupid numbers with Kyler Murray in Arizona if he goes there. And even better numbers, honestly, with Justin Herbert in LA if he goes there. So I think I definitely think Marvin Harrison Jr. is definitely one of the top Offensive Rookie of the Year candidates next year.
You got to hear what Max had to say about Marvin Harrison Jr. What does he have to say about the rest of Ohio State's 2024 draft class? We dive into that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. And if you're looking to put some money on Marvin Harrison Jr. on what he might do and trophies he may win in the National Football League, our friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook currently have Marvin Harrison Jr. with the second best odds to win the AP NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year in the upcoming NFL season at plus 600, behind only quarterback Caleb Williams. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. This episode is also brought to you by Billiards Plus. Billiards Plus has the best selection of pool tables, game tables, shuffleboard tables, and more. And the best service is Central Ohio. Billiards Plus carries grills that have up to 30-year warranties. That's right, a grill with a 30-year warranty. Everything you need for in-home and backyard entertainment is at Billiards Plus. And the grills, whether you like charcoal or gas or wood-fired, Billiards Plus has a perfect setup for all grillers. They are family-owned and operated. And when you talk to the staff at Billiards Plus, you know you're talking to an expert who won't steer you wrong. No matter the season, Billiards Plus has you covered for all your indoor and outdoor entertainment needs. Kenny, Sarah, and the whole staff will always go above and beyond to give you the best customer service in the industry. Billiards Plus. Visit their showroom on Dublin Center Drive in Dublin. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft is available now. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on Locked On NFL Draft to hear who the local Locked On experts are picking for every NFL franchise, with live reactions from local college football experts and even the fantasy football angle. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft available now on Locked On NFL Draft on the YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, Max, this is one of those weird years when it comes to Ohio State. Not only is there not a quarterback in the draft, the talent in totality is not really the elite caliber at certain positions that you would expect, including Marv in this conversation. How do you view this draft class by Ohio State?
Yeah, it's weird because I say this as a Penn State fan who's always been jealous of how good you guys have been forever. But I think it's
I can't go any further. Still got a better quarterback than Penn State because I don't believe in Drew Aller at all.
Really, I am an Aller guy. I'm of the belief that Aller is being hamstrung by how horrible the supporting cast at Penn State is right now.
Okay,
I think that is the issue. I think the receivers are not good at Penn State. The play calling last year, frankly, was abysmal. And outside of Olu Fashanu, I think the O-line wasn't great either. So
yeah,
I'm still a believer in Drew Aller. I think he's got a lot more than what he was allowed to give at Penn State. I'm very pessimistic about this year because I think the receivers are still a big issue. But going to Ohio State, and also, real quick, you said they don't have a quarterback this year. I'm actually a graduate of Syracuse, so I'm very grateful that that Kyle McCord. I'm very grateful. You guys didn't appreciate him enough, man. Kyle McCord is going to be probably the best Syracuse quarterback since Don McNabb. So I've been
trying to defend him as much as I can. I know that he was not a Stroud or Fields in year one during their first years. I get that, trust me. But still, like, you push him up out of town when you don't even know if the guy behind him or the guy in the transfer portal that you can get is going to be better. Doesn't make any sense to me.
Insanity. It's like it's almost unfair when you look at Dwayne Haskins, Justin Fields, CJ Stroud. Those are 3 back-to-back first round picks that Ohio State had at quarterback. So it's like it's unfair when he's like, oh, this guy's not a first round pick. It's like, yeah, quite frankly, they're only like a 3 or 4 first round picks every single year. So it's like Ohio State fans, I got a little they got a little bit spoiled, I think, by how many unbelievable quarterbacks they've had. Kyle McCord has been a solid quarterback, and I think you're right. I don't think Will Howard is that much of an upgrade at all.
No.
Even as a passer especially. And I think he'll bring a dual threat element to Chip Kelly's offense that I think will be really valuable, especially with how dominant their run game. I mean, that backfield of Judkins and Henderson's going to be stupid next year, man. And I think Howard's going to contribute to that, whereas Kyle McCord is really not much as a runner at all. But I think McCord's a better passer. But yeah, going back to this year's draft, I could talk about Ohio State football all day. I think you guys are winning it all next year. I'm putting it that way.
Wow.
I think you guys, that roster is stupid.
I'll say this quickly. I know we got a show to do. I got Georgia still being a better football team overall than Ohio State. I think it's the only one of the country, only team I can say that about.
I think you two are the 2 top ones. I think the only reason why I am hesitant about Ohio State is because of quarterback, and Georgia, I think, has the best quarterback in the country in Carson Beck right now. So that's why I could see why you say that. I think Oregon's up there too. I think Oregon's going to be a really good team, but I think you two, Georgia and Ohio State, are pretty clearly the top two teams. Yeah. But yeah, after that, man, it's going to be interesting where there's not an Ohio State guy that's like, oh, there's another first-round pick at Ohio State this year. Like JT Tuimoloau went back to school. I don't think he would have been a first-round pick anyways, but like all the guys that were great at Ohio State this past year, pretty much besides Marv, decided to stay at Ohio State, like Emeka Egbuka as well. So that's another reason why I think Ohio State is one of the best teams in the country next year, is how much talent is returning in addition to what they're bringing in. But I think there's still some guys to like. I think Michael Hall Jr. will probably be a late second-round pick if I had to make a prediction right now. I think he's a really, really solid defensive tackle prospect. I think there are other guys, too, that you can like Cade Stover is probably going to be a third-round pick at tight end. Tommy Eichenberg's probably going to be a fourth-round pick. I think it's a weird draft because there's not a ton of top-end Ohio State players like we're used to, because most of them, quite frankly, stayed in school this year.
You know, that's one thing that I think is very interesting when you think about the guys that stayed. Tyleik Williams, if he came out, he could have been a first-round pick. I don't know if he would have been. I don't know where people were saying him, but he could have been a first-round pick. I think Denzel Burke may have been the one surefire guy that if you say he comes out, he probably would have been a first-round pick. At worst, early second round, first 10 picks of the second round, just because he is not only his experience, but he got so much better in year 3 after somewhat of a sophomore slump in year 2. But you mentioned Michael Hall Jr., Cade Stover, Tommy Eichenberg. 2 of the 3 guys stayed at Ohio State past a third year. Cade, I think, was there for 5 years. I don't exactly remember that one off the top of my head. But they all grinded. They all worked. Michael Hall Jr., let's hit him really quick, because I do think another year at Ohio State would have done him some good, would have really helped him out and made him more money on his first rookie contract in the NFL. But he decided to come out. How do you view him as far as going into the draft? Because he was good, but not the most consistent guy on the field.
No, he wasn't. I think he's a guy that is pretty scheme dependent. I think he's going to be only working in a 4-3 defense as a probably defensive tackle in that front. I like him as a pass rush specialist. I think he's got some intriguing tools. I think he's got good finesse. He's a guy that I like, and I think he's worth taking on day 2, but he's probably going to end up being like a late second round pick right now. I don't think he's a very strong player at the point of attack right now. So I think he's got to develop some power to his game. But yeah, I like him. I think he's going to be, he was a guy that a lot of people thought was going to be a first round pick entering the year. And I think he never really lived up to that hype. So right now, if I had to predict where he's going to go, I'd probably say late second round, early third round right now, if I had to predict.
And then for Eichenberg as well, he's a guy, fourth round prediction from you, potentially. I like Eichenberg. I don't know how his game translates to the next level.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. He was an awesome player in college, and I loved his tape at college. I think really good run defender. He was an unreal run defender in 2022. Wasn't actually that great this past year, but he's a really great tackler. Missed less than 10% of his attempts since 2022 as well. I think he's just he has great play recognition and run game. Does a great job of sorting through offensive linemen and finding the running back as well. I don't think you're going to want him in coverage as much. And he also, I know he was actually a second-team All-American. I don't know, quite frankly, how. I don't think his tape was nearly as good as it was in 2022. His grade dropped by like 25 points in our grading system. So I think he's a guy that I loved his 2022 tape, and honestly, he might have made a mistake by staying in school another year. Because I think he would have been maybe picked even higher than fourth round if he came out. But I think he's a good run defender. I think he could play in coverage from the box, but you're not going to want him anywhere else, like in the slot or anything like that. I think he's an above-average athlete too. But I think that there are some limitations there, especially in coverage, that I think are going to hold him from being a day 2 pick in the draft, and why I think he's most likely going to be a fourth round pick probably.
With Cade Stover, another guy you've mentioned earlier, maybe a third round pick.
Yeah.
I think he showed a lot of growth in the passing game and being a different type of receiver and being really consistent at times. But that, along with the blocking, I am hesitant on saying Cade's going to be great year one, which is hard to be great as a rookie. I'm not trying to say like it's easy. It's very, very hard. What Marvin Harrison Jr.'s predict, what people predict for Marv in year one is not normal for really anybody. But Cade's one of those guys. I think he can be a solid tight end at the next level. Probably your tight end 2 in your room. Is that where you're seeing not just year one, but him right now being potential tight end 2 wherever he goes in the NFL?
Yeah, I think he's probably I think he's a high floor player. I think he's a guy that you like when he brings immediately to your locker room. There's a guy who honestly played linebacker at Ohio State in addition to tight end. So like he's a really good football player, I think. I think he's a good blocker. I think he's an intelligent blocker with good strength, really strong hands as well. I don't think he's the fastest player in the world, which is probably going to hold him back. But I think he's a really smart player, can contribute immediately for a team. I think he's got upside to be potentially a number one tight end in the league, but I don't know if he's going to be much more than just maybe an average to below average number one tight end in the league. But I do like his upside. I do like his floor, I should say, to be an immediate contributor for a team. So that's why I think he's going to be one of the top tight ends taken in this draft and probably a 3rd round pick if I had to predict right now. But yeah, I think he's definitely a guy that I'm interested in. It's just like a really good football player. And when you get to late day 2 and early day 3, you're looking for just really good football players. I think Cade Stover fits that bill really well.
He does. Guys, PFF does a phenomenal job with draft coverage and the grading, as Max mentioned, but they also have a mock draft simulator. Be sure to head over to pff.com/mock to use PFF's mock draft simulator. Draft Marvin Harrison Jr. to your favorite team and become a GM by using PFF's mock draft simulator. Earn rewards, make trades, and draft the future stars of the NFL over at pff.com/mock. We went through 4. We got 4 more players to go, potentially 4 more players to go, to hear how Max breaks down the rest of the Buckeyes that might get drafted this week. This episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. We've all been there, either as a player or a fan. It's halftime and the scoreboard is not looking good. You're feeling low, not sure you or your team can pull out a win. That's when you dig deep, lift up your head, and say to yourself, time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friend's money as I possibly can. That's right. The smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone anytime with tons of twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. Play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards. Make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball. Charge other players rent for your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests and in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put your game face on, and download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Gametime. Gametime is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. It's getting warmer outside. The weather is getting the way that we want it to be, which also means more baseball. Maybe you're trying to make a last-minute decision on where you and your friends can spend some time on a weekend when you figure out the weather's going to be warm and not rainy. Gametime will help you find those last-minute tickets with the price you'll love. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Max, there is one guy. He might be the oldest player at Ohio State, on Ohio State's draft class this year. I believe he is. He might even be the oldest player in the draft. I don't know the ages of all 300-plus guys that may get drafted. Josh Proctor's been at Ohio State for quite a long time, played some good football. But with him being older and having some injury history, I think those two things might be a negative for him going into the draft. Do you see it the same way?
Yeah, it could be. I think that's definitely two things that could be knocking him. I think he's a versatile player, really physical safety. That's something I really liked when I was turning on his tape because I'm going to be on day 3 of the PFF draft show this year. So I've been watching a lot of day 3 prospects.
Yeah,
and
smart man.
Josh Proctor is going to be one of them, I think. I love it. I love his mentality, man. I think he's a guy that as a depth player, he's not going to be a starter in the NFL, I don't think. But as a depth player and also as a special teamer, I think he's going to have a mentality that it's going to be great for special teams. So I think Josh Proctor, where I think he's going to go is probably 6th round right now, if I had to predict. And I think the age and injury history is going to come back to bite him sometimes. But I do love his mentality and I love his versatility. I think he could really be a great special teams player in the NFL. And again, I know some people say, okay, why should I care about that? When you get to day 3 of the draft, if you can't play special teams, there are not going to be a lot of teams that like you that much. So, I think special teams really gets valued on day 3 of okay, this guy, because you're not expecting these day 3 picks. You're not really expecting most of them to start for you on offense or defense. But what you are expecting is, hey, maybe be a good depth player for us, maybe a good backup, and you better be able to contribute on special teams or else you're not going to be able to make this 53-man roster. So I think Proctor can do that, but I still think he's probably going to end up being probably a 6th-round pick in the NFL if I had to predict right now.
For those of you guys watching right now via YouTube, my screen just went blurry. I apologize. Sometimes this webcam just has a mind of itself. Let's roll on with the show. Proctor with the 6th round, I understand it. But some also say Still Chambers might be a 6th-round guy at its peak, leaning more towards 7th round, undrafted free agent for Steele. That's where his sweet spot is. With Steele Chambers, he moved from running back to linebacker. I think it was a great move for him for this level going into the NFL draft. But I don't know if he's done enough, Max, this time of year heading into the draft to be a guy that's a surefire person to get drafted.
Yeah, I don't think. I think he is a guy that, I watched him actually a couple of days ago when I was covering the day 3 linebackers. And I think he is a guy that's going to be right on the borderline of getting drafted. Now, if I had to predict, gun to my head, I will say, yes, he sneaks into the 7th round. But I don't think I would not be surprised if he's an undrafted free agent. If he is, I think he will be one of the top undrafted free agents available. He's a below average athlete. That's one of the big problems with him. He tested out as a 46th percentile athlete. Now, what he does do well in terms of athleticism is agility. I think he's got really good agility. At a 79th percentile short shuttle, 60th percentile 3-cone. So really good agility. And I think that really helps him in coverage where I think he performs best, I think, as a coverage player. But he doesn't have great length at all, 13th percentile arm length, 6'1", 229, ran a 4.75 in the 40. So he's not a big player and he's not a fast player either. He has a great motor though. Again, great mentality that I love. Was good in coverage due to his agility, but he's a below average athlete, can get picked on in the run game because of how small he is as well. Again, special teams player. I think this is a guy that you want on special teams because I think special teams, you're going to have to get guys with great motors, and Steele Chambers definitely has that. So I think he could be a contributor on special teams, but his athleticism, his size, his length, I don't think it's going to lead to a career as a starting linebacker in the NFL. But I think he could be a depth player who, again, contributes on the 3rd level of the field, which is special teams. So, yeah, I think late 7th round if he does get drafted. And I think that's where I predict him is late 7th round. But there's a chance he does go undrafted in 2024, I think.
Max, it sounds like with you saying special teams being a good spot for him, that you think Steele Chambers will make a 53-man roster.
He could. I think he could. I think he's going to have a mentality that a lot of coaches just gravitate towards. And I think once you get to the day 3 of the draft, it almost like athleticism matters for sure because you're still betting on upside. But there's a lot of times where coaches are like, all right, I just want, again, like football players. Like 1st and 2nd round, you're chasing upside. You're chasing guys who okay, are good football players, but they better have a good upside too where they can turn into stars. When you get to the later part of the draft, it's like we just want to get guys that we know can contribute at least to something. And again, Chambers doesn't have great upside because of how small he is and how unathletic he is, but he's got a great motor. And I think he's going to be a really productive player. And I think he could be a guy that really contributes on special teams. So I think there is a chance that he makes a 53-man roster because of his motor and because of what he can contribute on special teams.
Matthew Jones, one of those offensive linemen that I loved for a while. There's a reason why he was not one of the guys that we said in the 2nd or 3rd or 4th round as being a prediction for where he will get drafted. I'm not only curious to hear your own personal analysis as you watch the film, but curious to hear PFF's grade on Matthew Jones, because I think those two things will probably go hand in hand as far as where he stands now heading into probably being a day 3 or round 4 through 7 pick in the draft this weekend.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to get drafted. I think that's one guy. I think the draftable guys for Ohio State probably ends at Steel Chambers. I think Mayan Williams, the running back, and Matthew Jones, the guard. I think those are two guys that are probably not going to hear their names called if I had to predict right now. I think Williams, a little bit of a better chance than Jones,
yes.
but I do think I don't think either of those guys are going to get drafted. I think both of them are going to be undrafted free agents. Jones was pretty solid this past year, a 70.9 grade and all that. He's been a solid player. He was a really good player in 2021. That kind of has been on the downswing since then. I like him. I think there's some issues with him that, as a pass blocker, is some work to do. Good run blocker in zone, though. I think there's some stuff there that you like with Matthew Jones. Now, his size isn't great. He's got below average arm length. He's an overall solid athlete, nothing too special. I think there's something there with Matthew Jones that you might be able to see if he's got something as an undrafted free agent, but I think he's more of a guy that you invite to training camp and see what he's got more than anything. I don't think he's a guy that you're going to spend one of the top 257 picks on. I don't think he'll get drafted on Saturday, probably.
Last thing here, let's couple Mayan and Matthew Jones together. One, this is really bad. I feel bad because I'm a Mayan Williams lover. Like, I love watching him play football, but I understand and realize that his skill set and his injuries over the past couple of years don't make him a wanted man by many of the NFL coaches and executives. Similar question to Matthew Steel Chambers, excuse me. Do you think Matthew Jones and Mayan Williams make a 53-man roster in the NFL?
Oh, good question. I would say no to Matthew Jones. It'd be tough for me to see him make a roster. It's tough for any undrafted free agent to make a roster. I'm going to say no to both. I think Mayan has got a little bit of a better chance. Problem with Mayan that you mentioned, though, the injuries. I mean, he was awesome in 2022. I mean, he truly was spectacular when Henderson went down. I mean, I loved what he showed as a running back in terms of just breaking tackles and all that. Injuries kind of robbed him of that this past year. Unfortunately, he wasn't nearly as effective of a player. I almost kind of wish he came back to school for another year.
Yeah.
Because I think there is a chance that he could have rebounded, but he's entering the draft now after a really down year because of injuries. I think his 2022 tape is the one you're turning on if you want to show teams what he can be. But I'm a little bit worried about that injuries right now. And I think overall he's a solid athlete, bigger running back, obviously at 5'9", 229. He's an absolute tank. But I think he's a really strong player as well. But yeah, I'm just worried about the injury history and the fact that he wasn't nearly as effective this year as he was in 2022. That's why I think he's probably going to be an undrafted free agent if I had to predict right now.
Max, is there anything you would like to kind of promote or talk about that PFF is doing for the draft that Buckeye fans might want to tune into?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are doing a live draft show for every single day of the NFL draft. In addition to on Sunday, we're going to be doing a recap show, recapping all the teams' drafts, which ones we liked and which ones we didn't like. I'm actually fortunate enough to be on day 3 of the draft this year. So I'll be on the Saturday broadcast. So we'll be surely talking about guys like Josh Proctor and Steel Chambers probably. Yeah. So it's tune in for day 3. I'm very excited. It's going to push my bladder to the limit because it's going to be like an 8-hour broadcast in a row, obviously, because you know how long day 3 can be. And we're on the entire time. So I'm very, very excited to do that. And then also on my PFF College Football show, that very next Sunday or Monday, hopefully, we're going to be putting out a way too early 2025 NFL mock draft, which I am very, very excited about. I don't know if they're going to be – I got to look into if there's any Ohio State players that we'll be talking about. I'm not too sure yet, but we'll be putting that out pretty soon, and we'll see if there's any Ohio State guys in there too. But, yeah, very excited. It's going to be – very, very long week for us at PFF, but also, in my opinion, it's the best week of the year. My favorite event of the year is the NFL draft. So I'm very, very excited to do this. And tune in to the NFL draft show on PFF on YouTube Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and even Sunday too.
I love the draft. I love the stories. We mentioned that earlier. But I also really appreciate Max coming on the show, providing his expertise to numbers and a little Penn State, Ohio State talk smack dab of the show. You can follow Max on X at Max Chadwick CFB. You can follow me on the same platform at jstevens07. Send every single email to jstevens317 at gmail.com. The draft is this week. I hope you're ready for it. Go Bucks.